John Mellencamp has always been a fighter.
Everybody says, John's got a bad attitude. Maybe I do, but like I've had it all my life, and that's me.
He's always been a fighter, and I think he's still fighting.
I'm very comfortable being angry.
John is a fierce competitor.
There's too much guitar going on these verses.
No matter what you're doing, you gotta be kicking ass.
You guys gotta play these songs a little harder. Don't be so tender. Hold on.
He plays football. He's playing to win. He's writing songs to be the best songwriter he can possibly be.
He doesn't hold anything back.
How do you think it's going?
It's a no-compromise affair with him.
I figure, well, if somebody likes me, they like me. They don't, they don't.
Throughout a career in which he's sold over 30 million albums, John Mellencamp has fought one battle after another against a name he didn't want, media hype he couldn't control,
You can buy this car for $7.95.
and a notorious reputation he himself helped to create.
A lot of people that I know want everybody to like them. See, that never was important to me.
He said this to me one day. He goes, Matthew, I've got two moods. I'm either okay or I'm pissed off.
Where's the kids at?
They're right behind me.
I'm not a rebel without a cause. I mean, I am just a guy who's trying to find out who the hell he is.
John Mellencamp grew up in Seymour, Indiana, a railroad crossroads in the farming heartland 60 miles south of the big town, Indianapolis.
My parents live in the same small town.
The countryside looks much as it did in the late 1880s, when great-grandfather Mellencamp left Germany to work the land in southern Indiana. John's grandfather, Speck Mellencamp, abandoned farming for carpentry, then lost the family homestead in the Great Depression.
I don't think, as a family, the Mellencamps have ever gotten over, really being kicked off the land.
Speck's son Richard got a white-collar job and married Marilyn Lowe, the 1946 Miss Indiana runner-up. They raised 5 children. Their second son, John, was born October 7th, 1951. He had to fight from day one.
When they brought the baby in, I just couldn't believe, that I had a child born with something like this.
Baby John was born with spina bifida.
And it was a growth on the back of his neck about the third the size of his head, and it was a real shock. They told me they could do surgery on it, take it off, or that his head could enlarge and he'd go into convulsions and die.
John's parents took a chance on surgery, and the operation was a success. It was the first sign that luck was on his side. John grew into an irrepressible, outgoing child.
He wanted to be a singer, he wanted to be a dancer. He was really entertaining, at least I thought he was.
Music was an outlet for John's restless energy, and he taught himself to play guitar.
I never was interested in becoming a flashy guitar player or making it cry or, do I know enough chords to accompany myself to sing a song? That's all I cared about.
Pretty woman, walking down the street, pretty woman.
He joined his first jobbing band in 1965. He sang with Crepe Soul for a year and a half.
It was unbelievable. I was making $100 every weekend.
They were loud, and the louder the better.
Being 14, hanging around with a bunch of 22-year-old guys, and we thought we were pretty good.
But all of John's spare time wasn't spent on music. When his dad got a promotion and bought a big house on the outskirts of Seymour, the rundown property was in dire need of repair.
To me, it was like, it was like the old man got rich or something, but he really didn't. He just bought this house, and he remodeled it with child labor.
Richard, he cracked the whip on the boys. He had 3 boys there to raise, and he always made sure that they done their part around the place.
Sometimes it got down to bare knuckles discussions, and John found out that, when he stood up to his dad, he lost.
In his senior year at Seymour High, John got his 21-year-old girlfriend, Priscilla Esterline, pregnant.
I walked out of high school at 3:30 in the afternoon, got in the car with Priscilla. We drove down to Louisville. We got married, and drove home. She went to her parents' house, I went to my parents' house. We didn't tell anybody.
I think when he told his mom and dad, it was like, what can we do now? The guy's married, you know, so that's it.
John managed to finish high school in 1970. The ink was still wet on his diploma when his daughter Michelle was born.
But you know, I was very cavalier. I didn't really have a job. I wasn't looking for a job. I don't want no job. You know, I was into motorcycles and hanging around with guys and standing on the street corner.
After 3 years of avoiding responsibility, John went to nearby Vincennes University in 1973 to study for a career as a radio DJ. But the only jobs he was offered after graduation were in radio advertising.
So I just abandoned that. I just threw that college career out the window, like within a week or so of doing a couple interviews. I thought, piss on this. So then I got a job at the phone company and formed a band called Trash.
It was 180 degrees from Creep Soul.
You know, it was a cover band, but we did it in my living room.
John had some lipstick on and a little knit top that came down to his midriff.
We couldn't get a job. Nobody wanted to see guys with makeup on their face, you know, in Indiana, and we sucked.
John was fired from his phone company job when customers complained about his vulgar language. It was 1975, and music looked like the only way out of his dead-end situation.
At that time, he was already thinking about, you know, trying to get a career started in music.
And so George and I started trying to write songs. We thought our time was running out. You know, I must have been all of like maybe 21 by now, 22.
All he really knew was that he had been sitting around his apartment for probably a year or two, sending off little demo tapes and bios to people, and he decided, I'm not getting anywhere this way.
Well, it's hard to be a dreamer in a dream-killing town, yeah, yeah.
He decided that he should just go to New York and try to see somebody.
I thought, well, just let him go up there and let the doors get slammed in his face and let him get this out of his system.
In December 1975, John dropped off his demo at the Manhattan offices of Main Man, a management company run by Tony DeFries, a flamboyant promoter who had recently made David Bowie a glitter rock phenomenon.
I had a face so cute, make a young girl cry.
But he just liked the way I looked.
You can't tell that ugly face. With a cheesecake face like this face, it's easy to say, oh, let's do the pretty boy thing.
I think in his mind, you know, he told people, you know, hey, I got the real thing here. This guy's got like a southern drawl just like Elvis, and I can do something with this guy. Because he saw himself as like the star maker type of guy.
DeFries came to Seymour bearing a management contract and a record deal.
It was good. It was all good until we had to make a record and Johnny Cougar came to life. Then it was bad.
And here is your host and special guest for tonight, Johnny Cougar.
Coming up, the birth of Johnny Cougar.
He says, I can't sell like
Great Midwest, we sacrifice body and soul.
Music impresario Tony DeFries blew into Seymour from New York in December of 1975 and signed small-town boy John Mellencamp to a record deal. But 24-year-old John had no idea he was about to become Johnny Cougar. The first time he saw his name, it was already printed on publicity material.
Well, the record company gave me my name now.
John confronted DeFries.
He says, I can't sell a guy named John Mellencamp. I can sell John Cougar. And I said, well, forget it then. I'm not interested. He said, great, go back and pour concrete, which is what you were doing.
I bet you heard this song before.
And put to a 23-year-old guy that way, it was kind of like, I kind of like Johnny Cougar now.
So what do you think about this Johnny Cougar name, John?
Does it wear comfortably on you, Johnny?
Yes, it does really.
In the fall of '76, DeFries descended on Seymour with wads of cash and big plans for Johnny Cougar Day, a promotional stunt nobody in John's hometown would ever forget.
This guy just came in and bought Seymour.
I mean, it was ridiculous.
And then he, you know, rented the Armory, and I put together a band, and we played. And they had a big parade. It sucked. It was terrible.
Yesterday, you're John
Mellencamp, but today you're Johnny Cougar and you're a star.
We had more people in Seymour, Indiana from New York and California, and they was out here looking for this kid out here in the cornfield that was going to be such a big sensation.
I had no idea who was coming. I had no idea what they were doing. I didn't know. You know, all I knew, it was like, this is better than the phone company.
I'm just a small town boy, being used like a toy, and working a 9 to 5.
The first Johnny Cougar album was released in 1976. Chestnut Street Incident flopped, a victim of great expectations fed by the pre-release hype.
Apparently, Main Man, your outfit that manages you, thinks big things of you.
You don't make anybody seem mature at birth, and he wasn't ready for it, and the music shows it.
When John and DeFries parted company in 1977, John was left with a new name,
Johnny Cougar,
and a dubious reputation. But luck smiled on him once more, and before the year was out, Rod Stewart's manager, Billy Gaff, signed John to a deal with Riva Records.
Gaff had a lot of money to throw around, and I just happened to be his pet project, so he threw it at me.
Gaff took John to England in 1978, where he recorded a song that got the attention of American rocker Pat Benatar.
I need a lover that won't drive me crazy, someone to thrill me and then go away.
Benatar's cover of I Need a Lover became a hit on the U.S. charts in 1979. Then John's luck doubled up when his own version went to #1 in Australia, then made the top 40 in the USA.
Song they knew, and then all of a sudden they were our friends.
As he and his The Night made the top 40 in the spring of 1981. But Riva Records had grown impatient with 3 years of sluggish album sales. So when John began work on his next album, American Fool, the stakes were high.
I think this was pretty much my last shot before I was going to get dropped from the record company. Everybody had had it with me. Because not only were the records not very good, my attitude toward business people was just like, hey, you don't like it, kiss my ass.
My job was to keep him from getting too crazy. I was a little scared, so that he could just go off and do whatever, his imagination said to do.
I got to bore people to death in 5 minutes of that.
Because he's pushy. He's very pushed everybody very hard.
Let's kind of hollow out these verses. So it's just kind of going, got it.
And with good results.
Little ditty about Jack and Diane.
Jack and Diane was considered very radical by the record company at the time. They didn't want to put it out. Nobody's going to play that.
By the fall of '82, American Fool was the best-selling album of the year, and Hurt So Good and Jack and Diane were both in the top 10, making John the first artist with a #1 album and 2 top 10 singles at the same time since John Lennon.
Ha ha ha! That's exactly how we felt. Ha ha ha! Take that, now you have to deal with us.
6 years earlier, Tony DeFries tried to turn John into the next big thing overnight. Now, after a long, hard climb, he had finally earned his stardom. But many in the press were still wary from the Johnny Cougar hype, and John was confronted with questions about his provocative Hurt So Good video and comparisons to Bruce Springsteen.
When Springsteen first started happening, it was like, oh, this kid's Springsteen. He's just raping Dylan. And then it was me who's raping Springsteen. This is kind of silly.
Everyone needs a hand to hold on to. Everyone needs a hand to hold on to.
John's private life was also getting more complicated. For 2 years, he had been having a love affair with Victoria Granucci, a striking 20-year-old actress he met in Los Angeles. Back home in Indiana, his wife Priscilla was aware there was another woman, and by the time Vicky came to Bloomington in 1979, Priscilla had already gotten her own apartment with daughter Michelle.
John and Priscilla kind of accepted it as a situation that didn't work and that there was no reason to have a lot of bitterness and hard feelings, that it wouldn't do anything for them or for their daughter that they were trying to raise.
They tried to remain friends, and they did for the most part. I mean, obviously they had their battles, but they hid a lot of it from me. You know, there wasn't the fighting and the tension.
John and Vicky's wedding in May 1981 raised a few eyebrows. Vicky was 6 months pregnant with their first daughter, Teddy Jo, and Priscilla helped pick out Vicky's bridal gown. Somehow, John's ex-wife and his new wife became friends. Once again, John Mellencamp got lucky.
This time I really think I'm in love, I'm in love. This time I think I'm really in love.
Coming up, John burns out and beats a retreat.
I felt like, man, I've been on the road for the last 10 years.
By 1983, the success of American Fool had made John Cougar a star. But after 6 years of touring and making records away from home, John Mellencamp decided to record his next album in his own backyard.
John realized that the whole getting out of town thing to make a record was bad for him on a lot of levels.
Well, I've rested in the devil's arms. I've chased the hounds of hell.
He would just basically spend all of his time getting in trouble, one form or another.
John turned a house near his home in Bloomington into a temporary recording studio dubbed The Shack. From now on, he would make all his records within minutes of his own house.
We kind of felt like this could end any minute. We better stay here.
If you grew up in the Midwest, you're a Midwesterner. You know, all your friends are here, your family's here, they have a certain type of lifestyle here.
Everything is slower here. Everybody's got a union card.
I get enjoyment out of my old high school friends. I get enjoyment out of just hanging around in this place, you know. And like I said in the song, I was born here, I'll die here.
Proud to die in a small town. Oh, small community.
He recognizes the fact that when you get to be rich and famous, that there are people with agendas other than just wanting to be your friend.
And I think John knew that people that liked him when he was just John Mellencamp are going to like him if he's Johnny Cougar or John Cougar Mellencamp, or whether he's famous or not famous.
And we all love him, and we don't want him to go away.
I think because John lives in a small town like Bloomington, Indiana, he can still have his finger on the pulse of what America is really thinking.
How many hours a day do you guys work? Well, we usually work from 6 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night, I guess.
He sings about the troubles and the times that most people in Indiana go through.
If you averaged out your daily wages, how much would that be an hour? About -$1.
I mean, he's just like an everyday guy. I think what he writes about is things he knows about.
You know, a person can only write about what they feel and what they think and what they've seen and what they experience. And I didn't sit down and think, I'm going to write a song called Pink Houses. That didn't happen. I've always sat down and kind of hoped for inspiration.
In a burst of inspiration, John recorded his next album in just 16 intense days at the Shack. It was an important record for John, the first by John Cougar Mellencamp. In time, he would drop Cougar altogether. Was a triumph. The 1983 release scored top 10 hits with Pink Houses and Crumbling Down. Rock critics began to take a more favorable view of John and his music.
I think the first time I really focused on him in some kind of concentrated way was the Aha record. You know, an amazing record. I was really, really impressed with it. I think most people were.
John now became a concert tour headliner. He was also earning a reputation for his hot temper and uncompromising standards. The ex-Johnny Cougar took charge of his own career.
You can't hang pants on hangers like this. There's great big creases in them.
I was enamored by his attention to every detail, whether it be the set.
We thought it might look a little boxy.
I want boxy.
The sound.
We'll get a level set on him, and you stay underneath of it.
The audience. I mean, this is a guy who would walk around in the audience and sit in seats as far as you could get back in the arena and as close as you can get and make adjustments for hours.
The minute this loop starts, this all has to go away.
A lot of people have had trouble working for John. He's a perfectionist.
Bow! Everything blows out.
John's a taskmaster. You know, he's a benevolent dictator, and I think every rock band has got to have a benevolent dictator.
What was not working with the first set?
He said, you know, you guys are going to get there and kick ass just as strong as me. If I catch anybody loafing, my foot's going to be up your butt.
It's just the kind of guy he is, and I think everybody knows that, who really, you know, loves him and stays with him and works with him.
I felt sheer terror when my guitar
John was reaping the rewards of hard work in '83, but that Christmas, he lost the man whose work ethic had always inspired him. John was shaken by the death of his beloved grandfather, Spec Mellencamp.
He died in Seymour, in the Seymour Hospital, and, you know, Seymour is like a two-story town. And at the time, as a young man, I thought, man, so this is it. You know, you do all this work, you put all your time, you learn all this stuff, and you die looking at some black tire on the top of a two-story building. Egad. Didn't look very good to me.
John and his father Richard were both deeply affected by the sudden death of the family patriarch. The loss brought father and son closer together.
I think as John got older, they understood each other more. And Richard, you know, when you get middle-aged, your heart gets tender and you love more and you have a better understanding of people.
In 1984, 32-year-old John solidified his ties to home by building a permanent recording studio in Mellencamp.
married to a farmer, so having a that was a concern to John.
In 1985, and soon after, Willie Nelson invited John to help organize the first Farm Aid benefit.
You couldn't play in art like that, could you? I mean, I had already made this record. And then Willie Nelson has the idea to put this show on.
I want to thank Willie and Neil Young straight away.
This Farm Aid thing was humongous. That's why I say I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
All right, we want to do a song that I wrote for you people.
John played Farm Aid in September '85, and by November, Scarecrow was the #2 album in the nation.
Grew up like my daddy did. Grandpa helped us land.
John not only won new fans, he also got stuck with a new handle. No longer the next big thing or the new Springsteen. The press began to refer to him in various ways as the voice of the heartland.
Home and family farming
It's like the backbone of this country and always has been. And if they take that away from us, we're in trouble.
He never wanted to be a spokesman for the farmers, although he cares about them deeply. He never wanted to be a spokesman for small towns, although it's a part of his life that he feels very strongly about. You know what I mean? He wants to be a spokesman for him.
After touring for the better part of 2 years, John came home to Indiana in the fall of '86 to work on a new album and reconnect with his wife and children. Vicki had given birth to John's third daughter, Justice, in '85, and 35-year-old John was in danger of sacrificing his second shot at marriage and fatherhood on the altar of rock and roll.
It's great when you're a gunslinger, which is how all young men consider themselves in their early 20s, you know. Whoop it up a little bit with some girls and play some music and move on. It's okay when you're a kid, but 36 groupies is not high on my priority.
John went into the studio in 1987 to record his first album on Mercury Records. Lonesome Jubilee rose to number 6 on the album charts, and the single Paper and Fire went to number 9. But it was a song called Cherry Bomb that got the most attention.
I remember when he made the video with the young black guy and the young white woman. He said, you know, I got my life threatened by the Ku Klux Klan. And I thought about it and I said, you know, screw them. And he said, screw them.
He's brought a lot of race relations together, especially having a lot of them African Americans in his videos. I know he took a lot of heat for having that, but he doesn't care.
I asked him about that album, and I said, you know, your perspective of the world seems so wide at that time. He goes, well, the ironic thing is that was one of the toughest times of my life.
John went back on the road in October of '87 and toured through July '88. '89. The music of Big Daddy reflected his mood.
I wrote a song that was absolutely public suicide. You know, I wrote a song called A Pop Singer that just said, hey, I don't want to be no pop singer.
I felt like, man, I've been on the road for the last 10 years. I've made 5 albums in 10 years, and my wife's divorcing me. I'm going through my second divorce. This sucks. You know, so that song just came out of it.
My job, more than even being a songwriter, is to try to give meaning to my life and for people who like my records to, you know, maybe a little meaning to their life. I mean, that's my job, man. I mean, other than that, I'm just a song and dance man. And when I feel reduced to a song and dance man, then I don't like it.
I really started painting because I didn't really have anywhere to go or anything that I really wanted to do.
Painting is one thing that you can do without a band, without a manager, without a wife. It's a singular activity.
I suppose those paintings are quite a few conversations with himself, just like the songwriting must be.
John really took the eyes of his subjects and showed them as being dark circles around them. That was the way John was looking at life. With all this success, he was a very unhappy guy.
The record company's going, hey, what's going on? The managers are going, hey, what are you doing? You know, let's go out and do some shows. Let's do something. Like, nah, I ain't doing that.
By March of '91, John emerged from his 2-year funk and was ready to rock once again.
You think that the lead section's long enough? I like it short. I do too. Yeah, I like it short, but sometimes I wish the hell it'd go on, you know?
On Whenever We Wanted, he dropped Cougar once and for all. From now on, he would make records simply as John Mellencamp.
We needed to, like, revitalize ourselves, so we decided this time to go into a studio as a male-dominated, masculine rock band.
It was a completely unpretentious, top-of-his-head album after the whole Big Daddy thing and the breakup of his second marriage and stuff like that. But in the midst of it, he meets Elaine. And so everything changes.
Top fashion model Elaine Irwin was hired for an album cover and video shoot in the summer of '91. She arrived in Bloomington, never having met John Mellencamp. It was not exactly love at first sight.
Don't look at me, don't touch me. Give me mine, share hair.
I thought of John as this like wholesome, American, sweet, you know, family guy. I walk in and he's smoking, cursing.
When Elaine showed up, it was like, this girl's too young. You know, because at the time she was 20 and I was like 36, 37.
He said, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Look, she looks like my kid. And this was my introduction to him. Not a hello, not how are you doing, not a handshake. What the hell are you doing?
I was trying to make the best of it, but my skills at making the best of it weren't that
good. Everything he said, either I found it really funny or really irritating, and so I went home and I kept talking about this video. Oh, he was such a pain in the butt. You can't believe this guy.
I don't think that she quite saw the charm of John Mellencamp in the beginning.
When John came to New York for a show at Carnegie Hall in September 1991, he called Elaine.
His way of asking me on a date was, I'm coming to New York to see you, and if you're not there, I'll hunt you down and kill you. You know, this was his proposal to ask me out. I mean, I thought, but I did understand his charm and his wit. We went out after his show, chatted a little longer, then we went to dinner the next night, and we started talking on the phone. Just kind of evolved.
And then I went to Los Angeles, and she went to London, and I called her from Los Angeles. This is like the next day. And I said, are you coming to Los Angeles? She's like, I can't, I'm working. I said, piss on that. So she cut her shoot short in London and came to Los Angeles and never left.
I came from the airport. I came around the corner of the hotel, and I could see him standing there at the end of the hallway. And I will always cherish that memory.
What's great about her is that she doesn't need him for anything. She doesn't need him for money, for fame, for any blessed thing. That's where love starts, when two people don't need anything out of each other. And mutual admiration brings them together.
When John Mellencamp met Elaine Irwin, I think the clouds parted and the sun began to shine again in his life.
The sun was starting to shine, but there was a dark cloud on the horizon.
When we first started dating, he had what he would call an anxiety attack.
I think I was the first guy in the world to ever get panic disorder. So I'd be just sitting around talking, all of a sudden I get these humongous adrenaline rushes. And I mean, it's like it turns your head around. It's like, whoa, what the hell's happening? So you panic, right? And that's what happened.
We started a radio promo tour.
John Mellencamp Band live from Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was absolutely the most grueling road trip we'd ever taken. And we were doing drive time shows in St. Louis, and 7 a.m., noon, Kansas City, Denver, drive time, evening. And then we did that for 30 straight days. 3 cities a day. It was killing us.
Let's just get up and go.
On the morning of October 17th, 1991, John was in a Seattle radio studio.
I had stayed up till like 5 in the morning. I had to be on the radio at 7. I got there and had a huge adrenaline rush and passed out.
I took him to a hospital, checked him in, and they told him that he may be looking at some heart problems.
And they did all these tests on me and he said, man, you've got to stop smoking. Your cholesterol is off the chart. And of course at the time it was like, am I going to live? Yeah. Okay, see you. You know, I didn't think anything about it. And I should have.
I only have myself to blame.
Coming up, John runs smack into a heart attack.
And he says, well, you've had a heart attack.
He was tired. Superman would be run down.
This is going to kill you.
John Mellencamp hit the wall in the fall of '91. Exhausted after a marathon series of promotional appearances, he collapsed in a Seattle radio studio. Though doctors were concerned about his health, John ignored their warnings and kicked off his Whenever We Wanted tour in January of '92. The tour culminated in a huge 4th of July concert in Indianapolis. John rocked hard through the summer of '92. But the highlight of his year was his wedding to Elaine Irwin on September 5th.
To love and comfort her. To honor and keep her. So long as we both shall live.
Many friends consider John's third marriage to be the
Fall in love with her. That's it!
2 months after John and Elaine's wedding, tragedy hit John's band. Keyboardist John Casella suddenly died. Struck down by a heart attack at the age of 41. Nobody had seen it coming.
John died of a heart attack, and we all went, John Casella died. And that's all that we could relate to, was that John was dead. You know, the nicest guy in the world, the nicest guy in the band. How did that happen?
It was a big loss for the band. But the impact of the heart thing was lost on us. We just took it much more lightly than anybody who cares about someone should.
Sessions for John's 1993 album Human Wheels had been interrupted by John Casella's death. But John returned to the studio with renewed intensity. The resulting album was a dark, textured, critical success.
That was a really
The record company could only get what I thought one of the best songs that George Green and I ever wrote to number 48. I felt like, well, I'm pissing in the wind here. Why am I even making records?
John quickly recorded a brand new album, daring the record company to match his energy and effort.
So, and I made a record in like 2 weeks. Okay, here's your record, Jack.
We tried to make the most sparse, pop-laden 30-minute record in history.
I want you to dance naked.
The album Dance Naked spawned the surprise hit single Wild Night. John's duet with Michelle and Degacello rose to number 3 by the fall of '94.
We had this huge hit record with this cover song, which was a complete accident. You know, the fact that her and I were even together was suggested to me by a guy named Tim White.
I talked to him about her. I talked to a lot of people about her. He was the only one who listened.
You can't plan this stuff. It was a lucky break.
John didn't plan to tour in 1994, but with the surprising success of Wild Night, he decided to hit the road. He had not mounted a full-blown tour in 2 years.
John is not a huge fan of touring because you're not getting enough rest, you're not getting the right kind of food.
I'm going to be puking up my dinner all night.
You're tired all the time. And I think that the only time when he's really happy being on tour is when he's actually on the stage.
While his onstage energy remained high, offstage, 43-year-old John's 5-pack-a-day cigarette habit was taking a toll.
My nicotine addiction would wake me up in the middle of the night and go, hey, feed me. And I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't sleep. It never dawned on me it was the nicotine and the caffeine and the stuff that I did, you know, my lifestyle.
John's lifestyle finally caught up with him on a rainy day in the summer of 1994. After a concert at the Jones Beach Theater on Long Island, New York, John came backstage feeling under the weather.
My arms felt funny. Like I had a cold in my arms or something. And I was awfully tired and terribly, terribly groggy.
He just looked worn out. He looked sick. And not in his normal mood that he is around his friends.
Everybody thought, well, Mellencamp's fun tonight. Let's get the hell away from him.
We all thought he would just run down.
And I thought, oh, he just got the flu.
This is not good.
He went to bed, we all went to bed, and he woke up and he just was, you know, sick.
My head was spinning, and I was nauseous, and I was throwing up, and I thought, oh, terrible. And so Elaine got up with me, and you know, she had to like carry me into the shower. It was a drag, but I thought it was a panic attack.
The next morning, I gave him a call to get together. We were going to have lunch that day. And his wife picked up the phone and said, he's sleeping. He got very sick last night. And wasn't like John to sleep past 8 a.m.
Actually, I got a call from John's wife, and they asked me to get a doctor. I went over, and the first thing we did was cancel the next few shows.
This was unheard of. Come on. We had never missed a gig, you know? They probably took 15 minutes for them to convince me that we're not playing.
We have played on our deathbeds, but we've never canceled. Ever.
Just 3 days later, John was out of bed and back on the road. He played 20 more shows before going home on a break in the tour. While in Bloomington, a strange sensation in his chest convinced John to see his doctor for a long overdue physical.
What if I get knocking on your front door some night?
His doctor gave him some sobering news.
And he says, well, you've had a heart attack. I said, you're out of your fucking mind. No way, we can't even read. You know, what are you talking about? I don't have a heart attack. When did I have a heart attack? I didn't fall down. I didn't have no chest pains. You know, and I mean, I called this guy every name in the book. You know, the devil was hitting me with a pitchfork in the back of the head, saying, call him more names, you know, to make it go away. And he finally looked at me and he said, look, man, you can act any way you want, and you can call me anything you want, John. But a first-year medical student can tell by this that you've had a heart attack. And when he said those words to me, a first-year medical student, like, there's no mistake here.
John phoned Harry Sandler and told him to cancel the rest of the tour.
It took a little while to realize that I was actually going to make a phone call and blow out a tour. You'd never cancel a show.
I immediately went into a humongous depression. I thought I was dead. I thought, well, you've had a heart attack, that's it. Clock out. It's over.
I called him up and said, just stop smoking. You're out of your mind. You're going to kill yourself, and think about your kids. And he said, you know, you've never smoked. You don't know the power of this addiction. And all I can think of is, this stuff must be worse than heroin.
John's battled, I'm sure it's pretty obvious, but he's battled the smoking issue. But I think it takes a different mental approach, you know, to really get yourself in sync with your body and understand that you've had a setback. And I think it took John some time to come to terms with it and be able to, not that you can't really overcome it, but you can live with it and understand it better.
In time, with Elaine's help and support, John changed his diet and began a regular program of exercise.
My head started to clear, and I started realizing, you know, this really wasn't so bad. This was kind of a good thing. It's not good that I have this disease, but it's a good thing that I exercise now. And I mean, you know, religiously, 6 days a week. I did everything I was supposed to do except stop smoking, you know. But these things eventually will kill me if I don't stop.
When John found out he had a small heart attack, I didn't take it very seriously. But then, of course, I think it was like a month later I had one, so it evened out.
You know, I've had hundreds of people say to me, well, you just had a small heart attack. Hey, Jack, when you have your heart attack, I'll call you up and say, did you just have a small heart attack or was that a big one? If you live, it's a small one. If you die, it was a big one. Whatever it is, it's bad. If you have a heart attack, it's bad. It's not a good thing. But once again, you know, the John Mellencamp thing panned out. It's made me a ton better person than I ever was. You know, I can still get anxious, but I never have panic attacks.
His heart attack has changed him a lot. He's mellowed out a lot and a lot better person to be around. You know, before he was kind of high-strung, and now he's just pretty mellow.
Of course we still have arguments because, you know, I am a teenager, so, like, you know, we still have our ups and downs, but now we can actually kind of sit down and, like, have a conversation about things. He's way more, like, he's not as tense, you know, like, you know, doesn't have to smoke 15 cigarettes to have a little conversation.
It made me realize that this is finite, you know, because I was Superman, bulletproof. Until that happened. Bulletproof, man. You couldn't hurt me. I could do anything. You know, nothing was going to happen to me. Not me. Then something does happen to you. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Coming up, a new label, a new record, and a new beginning.
Being Johnny Cougar has
forced John Mellencamp to cancel 2 shows in August of '94. He went home to Indiana, where his doctor told him that he'd had a heart attack. He immediately canceled the rest of his tour.
When it first happened to me, I thought, man, this is it. I quit, I retire, I'm not going to make no more records, I'm not going to go on tour, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay home and just hang around with the kids.
There was never any doubt for me that he was going to go out and record and perform again because that's what he does.
In January '95, 5 months after his heart attack, John took his first step back on stage. Calling themselves Pearl Doggy, he and his band played a series of unpublicized concerts in small clubs within a bus ride of home.
That was really fun, in that we got to get back together as a band and yet not have the pressure of the John Mellencamp thing. It was just, boy, we could goof, and God, those club days were really raucous and great.
Well, this was a way to get back into it, to fire our way back in. I think that was part of it. It was probably just that low pressure, get back in and have some fun.
In 1996, more than 2 years after the release of his last album, John returned to the charts with Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, the 14th album of his career.
This loud Cuban band is crucifying John Lennon.
John's always having to start over one way or another. And the record is kind of a dark joke. Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. You know, he's about as happy-go-lucky as a heart attack. I saw you first. Song about Elaine, you know, and their love, you know. Great lyric. And it's a wonderful record.
Everyone was looking, but I saw you first.
While Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky went platinum within weeks of its release, John was unhappy with the record company's promotional efforts.
There's no sense in me making records if people aren't going to hear them. If we're not going to get them on the radio, then there's no sense in doing it. If we're not going to entertain people, you know, I already entertained myself writing them. So that's good enough for me. But if we're going to take it the next step, let's take it the next step.
John signed with a new label in 1997 and went into his Belmont studio to record his first album on Columbia Records.
I knew that this record was probably more important to him than anything he'd worked on in a long time, because it was going to be the first record on the new label, and he'd expressed to me that he really wanted to do something special.
My philosophy in life, I'm very passionate about what I do. I don't want to do it unless everybody's going to be passionate. My grandpa told me something before he died, and I believe it. If you're going to hit a guy, kill him. If not, walk away. And I agree.
John's always had that same mindset about get in there and kick some ass, you know. He's always had that. Probably just the added pressure of this, you know, the best record label in the world we have now. That's a lot of pressure. You know, we have got to deliver.
John's 15th album hit the airwaves in the fall of '98. Simply titled John Mellencamp, it finally brought John full circle from his early days as Johnny Cougar.
Actually, being Johnny Cougar has worked out great for me because it's allowed me to be who I am. And you know, I have to say, in all fairness, in the last 15 years, the critics have been really good to me. You know, they've been really nice to me.
It all comes true. Yes, it all comes true.
And now, what? What are you going to say to me? This guy ain't going to make it? What? What are you going to say? What, you're going to try to push a hot nut with Johnny Cougar? You know, come on.
It's a slick trick to know somebody so well and still admire them. I know what a knucklehead he is, you know, and I still admire the guy. But I know that long after both he and I are gone, John is going to be in much higher critical estimation than most of the people who are successful in the 70s and 80s and 90s.
It's never been cool like John Mellencamp, John Cougar, or any of the above. But somehow I've been lucky enough to write these songs that touch people. And when that happens, it's like, cool kind of goes out the window at that point.
Little ditty about Jack and Diane.
Jack and Diane gets played as much today as it did in 1982. So these songs are identified with me. So people, when they think of John Mellencamp, they think of Pink Houses. Why? Because they just heard the thing 15 minutes ago. That's great. That's a lot more than I ever anticipated or hoped for back in 1976 when I was Johnny Cougar. You know, just wanting to stay up late in clubs, you know, and chase women. I mean, that's a lot more than I ever had visioned.
But it's just another
Small Town and Lonesome Jubilee.
I believe in watching more sports.
I believe back to his local community. The Indiana University football team practices in a new indoor facility thanks to his philanthropy. Seymour's artists have also gotten his support.
Behind me is the home that I grew up in. It was built 150 years ago.
When Mark Ripley's family sold the landmark house, John bought it and donated it to the Indiana Center for the Arts, which sponsors art classes and exhibits by local artists, including a painter named John Mellencamp.
I think he touches more people because he's more real. He's a very down-to-earth guy, and you don't find that, especially in today's superstars.
He likes games, he likes to have a good time, he likes to laugh, he likes to have other people enjoying things with him.
Hey, you've got to pass it, you can't run it.
His ambition is to be one of those guys that hang out by the pool and drink iced tea. He never does. When he can, if he can just monkey around with the kids, they sit out in the front yard and they play football.
Well, I got two circus clowns here who like to fight. They got one black eye and a bloody nose. They are the hoodlums of my third wife. Whatever I say, they will oppose. No fight! No fight!
John and Elaine's two sons are their pride and joy. Hud, named after John's favorite film, was born in April 1994. And Speck, named for John's beloved grandfather, was born 1 year later. John has rededicated himself to fatherhood.
Catch it, Red, go! All right. Touchdown, Red!
I think he's a better father for having made a few mistakes on his first 3 kids, and also as a husband.
You hold me like this, and I hold yours up.
That's a good idea. You know, moms are a little more ginger with their kids and, you know, clean them up. John's out there getting them dirty and stuff like that.
John always wanted boys. And so now he's got boys, and there's going to be a little bit of a Mellencamp Hellraiser in them, whether Dad likes it or not.
If we hope and if we have faith, the boys are going to be just like John. That's the way I think.
From the oldest generation of Mellencamps to the youngest, family is at the center of John's life in southern Indiana.
The older he gets, the more he gets like me, so he doesn't like that. All the things that I told him when he was kids, now he's telling his kids the same thing, you know.
He's just changed so much throughout the years that just sticks with me all the time. I mean, I talk to my husband about it, and I'm like, he's really changed. He's come a long way.
He's matured. He's got a new wife, a couple of new children. He's had the heart attack, and he's a lot easier to be around.
Your life is now.
At 47, John is no longer a hell-raising young rock and roll rebel. And that's all right with him.
Guys really aren't any good until they turn 40 years old. They're not responsible. But then your guy turns 40, and I think a lot of things happen.
He's a great dad, and he's a great husband, and he's a great date. And he's a strong individual, and he's a funny guy. And sometimes he's a struggling guy. You know, he struggles with himself. This is a lot of emotion this guy has. And everything he does with such conviction.
In the 80s, I had all this great stuff happen to me, and I wasn't there to enjoy it. Because I was always doing what's next.
But John Mellencamp isn't worried about what's next anymore. Secure in his family and his music, he hopes for the best, but his life is now.
Your life is now.
Let me tell you something. You're looking at the luckiest guy in the world.
Endurance is his middle name. Rod Stewart behind the music is up next. Part of 80s Week, only on VH1.
The night is